Welcome back, guys, to another episode of Final Fantasy XI versus Final Fantasy XIV. And today, we're going to delve into the continent of Vana, learn the history and lore of said continent, and learn how everything started, up to the end of Final Fantasy XI's first story. But first, I want to apologize to all of you for not stating something in the last video. Last time I said that the world was called Erezia in Final Fantasy XIV, and I was wrong. The world is actually called Hedalin, and the continent of which the player resides on is called Erezia. Some may know this already, but to clear things up with those who do not know this, I will tell you now that Erezia is just the continent and not the world, which probably means that the game is certainly going to expand within a couple of years. Yeah, so sorry about that. Well guys, with that out of the way, let's get started. So in the beginning, there was darkness, until sentient crystal, like we didn't see that one coming. I mean seriously, in every Final Fantasy game there was that one crystal that created the universe, and the one creation that created by the crystal, and all that whatnot. The story is always the same. But anyway, from that crystal came the first living beings to explore the universe. That being the gods of Final Fantasy XI. However, there was one goddess that we are pinning our focus on, and that goddess is Altana. Now, the gods were all powerful and had fun. They created the world of Vana, so they had a playground to run around in. They even had children, of which to this day we call the Zalart, of whom have their own expansion in Final Fantasy XI. However, I will not be talking about that now, but in a later video when we reach that point. So, the Zalart are what you would call demigods, and were not human, or so they were more human than the gods had expected. When the gods had all the fun they could handle, which to me is kinda odd seeing as though they are gods, oh well, they went into a deep sleep in their heavenly paradise, leaving their children, the Zalart, to watch over their playground and use it as their home, to which they did, until they started to miss their creators and begin to work on a gate that will take them to their sleeping creators. Now, don't get them wrong. They did do what they were said to do. They made the world flourish with many plants and life. They extracted gold and other treasures from the earth itself. They reached the skies and traversed the entire world, and even lived their lives in peace and harmony. But, like a baby missing their mother, they started missing their own mothers and fathers. So they decided to make a door to live with them once again. However, the gatekeeper to the gates of heaven was very disgusted to see mere sub-creatures trying to join them in their place of godhood. So, he sunk their cities, killed the Zalart, and had the gate sealed away for all eternity. It was said that he nearly destroyed the world. Damn. This is when Altana awoke from her sleep and saw that many of her children were slaughtered by the hands of their own, by their own want to see the gods. When she gazed out to see the sight of ruin across Vana, she experienced the emotion that many gods do not seldom feel, sadness, and wept 5 tears upon the soul of Vana, and from those tears came the 5 enlightened races. We know them as the Hume, the Galka, the Elven, the Mithra, and the Tartar. Now, Promathia, who had just awoken from his slumber, did not like this, so he in turn cursed the enlightened race with their own individual sin. The Humes were cursed with the sin of apathy. They didn't really care much about other things, much less themselves, unless they had a strong purpose. Kind of sad, seeing as though this does define humans quite closely. The Galka were cursed with the sin of rage. They were built strong and tough, but held animosity towards those who disagreed with them. The Elven were cursed with the sin of arrogance. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Elvens are giant pricks. They only really care about the Elven race, and sometimes sees themselves at the top of all the races. Good thing the humans have apathy, because they, as a race, are the most numerous and could easily outnumber their precocious bastards. No offense. The Mithra were cursed with the sin of envy. They are usually curious as to what the other races are doing, and many times they would try to take the mini races' resources, trinkets, and other goods that they may not have. Maybe that's why they're the best thieves in the game. And last, the Tartar were cursed with the sin of cowardice. Though it may not seem so, the Tartar were gifted with intelligence and the first magic spell because they wished to stay out of the fields of battle. Even Shantoto has a fear in getting close to certain people. I'm not saying they're total cowards, but in reality, to find an NPC Tartar warrior or whatnot is quite rare. The last thing Promathia tried to do was absorb the power of the Mother Crystal, but Altana instead converted that power that was absorbed into the enlightened race creations, becoming their life force, to which you could say that Promathia was the father of the enlightened race, and to which each of the enlightened race had a piece of the Mother Crystal inside of them, making them the true firstborn of Vana diel. So with his efforts in shambles, Promathia created the Beastmen race, as to keep the enlightened race in an eternal conflict with their counterparts, and to this day, the conflict continues. Thousands of years later, we are coming up to the opening of Final Fantasy XI, and thus, the story begins. Now, that was just a mythical version of the beginning, but the real beginning will be told in a later video. The video will be called History of Final Fantasy XI. We will start with the true beginning, and we'll go all the way up to the Age of Adventurers. That age will be 20 years after Aldo had lost his home to Vanazia and his sister Verena. The loss of the Crystal War and the true union of the cities and races so to stand together against the Beastmen, or so the story says. That, my friends, will be another story for another day. And again, that is when we'll begin the true history of Final Fantasy